here now at the Pillar Exterior stage talking to our guys, Steven Marcellus Sipple from Husker Online. Sip, what's going on, bud?
I like Marcellus. That's good.
I was trying to come up with a new one for you that I hadn't done yet.
Good. That was pretty good.
Steve, no peer pressure to answer out loud because I know you're going to say what you want to anyway. But you have to be missing me, right? Like, do you? Okay, that's good because I feel like I always see you in the spring and I haven't yet.
Yeah, what's the deal? Yeah, it was nice when Shane. It's very comforting when I get text from Shane. It feels like the old days.
Comforting. Well, you're just as weird as ever, so that's good, man. How you been, man? You're full-fledged into this thing, couple years almost. No, are you on a 2-year anniversary yet? But how do you like the recruiting world, or that portion of your later life new world?
2-year anniversary. Yeah, we are. I think it's May.
Yeah, it's coming up.
Yeah, good job.
Thank you.
It's not too much different because I did do I worked with beat writers, the Journal Star who were heavily involved in recruiting, namely Brian Christopherson, for a period, and then Parker Gabriel. So I was not. I was in it. I stayed in it. I had to stay in it. Not to the extent that I am now, but I'm not. I mean, Brian Munson doesn't turn to me for recruiting information.
Hey, Steve, what do you think? What are you hearing?
Very rarely. I mean, there's some cases where I can help, few and far between. But those guys like Brian and Sean and Robin on the basketball side, they're so dialed in that it's sort of remarkable to me. Munson's a veteran. So they handle that. So it's not that much different from that. The answer is it's not all that much different from that standpoint.
So, Sip, I mean, since we're talking a little recruiting here, Nebraska did land a couple of, I presume, wide receivers. I know Jackson Carpenter's listed as an athlete some places over the weekend. You think we're kind of in that stretch where we might start to see a little bit of that summer push we've seen I guess just last year from Coach Rhule, where he put in the work on a majority of his class kind of in post-spring, early summer?
Well, yeah, I mean, I do know enough to say that the way it works now is we're probably not in the heart of that period yet. But yeah, I mean, when you get into June, I think it'll start popping because that's when a lot of the commitments happen, a lot of the action's happening in the summertime. We're probably a little early for that. As far as these two latest commits, I'd say that, Brian Munson saw Carpenter coming.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, known about Bryson Hayes, the kid from Mays, Kansas, right outside of Wichita. Those guys, Sean and Brian Munson, had known about him. I think the commitment might have caught him by surprise a little bit. The timing.
It did me just because Kansas State is so good at what they do in terms of how they recruit, and their attention is very specific. They don't recruit a lot of loosey-goosey guys. Like, they kind of zero in, and they got a good process. And I am a little surprised that it was this early because I thought K-State could make it pretty interesting.
Yeah, and KU was a factor. I know
they're good. Hey, they're in the same boat. They do a good job too, Sip.
Yeah, KU definitely wanted him. I know that. KU wants to establish itself in Kansas more. I think KU still has a little trouble getting the hot. I mean, I know Lance, so I'm not speaking totally out of turn here. I think they want to establish themselves more with the high-end Kansas kids, and Bryson Hayes would be that. So yeah, those two Kansas schools wanted him badly. Nebraska went in and plucked Bryson Hayes, who's a receiver from KU and Kansas State. They both legitimately recruited him hard.
Mm-hmm. Sip, speaking of getting in on the high-end in-state guys, Bryson Hayes is actually the first commitment outside of the state of Nebraska for Nebraska
Mhm.
for 2025. I mean,
Mhm.
how dramatic has been you've seen the efforts of Coach Rhule and staff, obviously with last year's class, but again this year where 4 out of their 5 commits so far are in-state guys.
Yeah, it's kind of inverse, like the way that usually happens a lot of times. So it started off this way, and I think it's telling. I mean, it's all these decisions. I mean, I try not to, as Damon knows, I try really hard not to paint with a broad brush because, especially with these this topic, because these are individual decisions. But like a Caden Vermoss, Caden Vermoss has been committed for a year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He literally has been committed. I think he almost exactly a year now.
Yeah, we're about a week off, but yeah.
Yeah. So, and there's other guys in that group that have been committed for some time. Tyson Terry's been committed, I think, since last summer.
Booth has been committed since August. Yeah.
Yeah. So they are individual decisions, though. But I like it. I mean, obviously, I like it. I think I know this. I know because I just got off the phone with Tim Carpenter.
Lockjaw, good dude, great dude.
Yeah. Dude, I think what you're finding is these Nebraska kids feel very comfortable that this staff is here for the long haul, and that there's just an overall comfort. I know that Tim felt that, and he wanted that as a dad. He wanted to feel like, my son's going to be at Nebraska for a period of time, for 4 or 5 years, and that this is the staff that's going to be with him. And some people probably listen and go, why was that even a question? Well, I don't know. It's always a question, right? In college football to a certain degree. And it's just a question the other way too. I'm sure coaches, if like a Nebraska coaching staff members are listening, they think of it the other way. Well, Jackson Carpenter will be with us for 5 years because a lot of times it's that way. But man, it does. I think with these Nebraska kids, I mean, I'll try to get somewhere with this conversation. With Nebraska kids, they're probably a little more likely to stick, right? And these kids, if you just look at them individually, they seem very likely to stick in the program, which is what Rhule wants that, right? He wants to develop players, and that's what these kids be.
Now, I'm going to say this knowing full well that some people aren't going to be able to handle the context because you're gonna hear a '90s reference, but I'm unapologetic when the shoe fits. Whether it's me being recruited at a very competitive position during a competitive time, because remember, Nebraska wasn't quote unquote good yet when they made this run on a lot of in-state guys in the early '90s. They were getting there. They weren't over the top yet, right? People still, relative to their success, were a little reluctant to embrace Coach Osborne as a guy that could win the big one.
Mm-hmm.
You remember those days, right, Sip?
Absolutely do, yeah.
So as a parent and as a guy that was recruited during that time, there is a couple of similarities. Number one, a lot of local guys are saying yes, even though they're not where some other competitive recruiting teams are, because you're getting the sense you want to be a part of something that's brewing, right? Like it feels like something good is going to happen. I want to get in on this. So there's that part. Then there's the other part from a parent. And I think Timmy feels like this, and I know a couple of other guys do that have legacy guys, whether it's Toby Wright, there's a ton. Booker, this whole cycle has 1,000. You're willing to sacrifice a little. Maybe your kid being a star right away or at all or whatever, to be around people that you get the sense they'll be good for them for the long haul. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. It's like if ask Dylan, like, or Dom, and you guys have a good relationship. If you're not going to have your son, and he may struggle at times, which all kids do in college, there's certain people you want them around. And you just get the sense that this is a staff you want young men around because you may get them back. It seems like you'll get them back better than when you left them.
Yeah, that seems like it definitely. And my familiarity is mainly with Coach Rhule, and I would definitely say that. And I think you, Damon Benning, would, and I know Tim Carpenter would say, and Tim did say, that he's better off being around Coach Osborne, better off for being around that staff.
Mm-hmm.
He carried that into adulthood. So yeah, exactly right. And I think you're really, I do get the sense that people feel like, I mean, you always say like, oh, the program's headed in the right direction. It's kind of a cliche, but it does feel like there's a lot of good energy now. Is it really?
Do you know? So here's the dirty little thing people don't want to talk about. A lot of times, guys in state either don't like or don't like is kind of a strong word. Sometimes you don't want to go where other guys are going just because they're going there. Like that's a real thing in recruiting, especially in state. But you kind of feel compelled, like, I don't want to miss out. Oh, sure, I can get along with player X, Y, and Z now, even though we competed against each other for 4 years, because for the greater good, I don't want to miss out on something good. Like I kind of feel like it was a lot like that early, right? For as much as I love Clinton, I was like, I don't know, man. Like, do we want to go to the same school? Like, we've been, but you know what I mean? It's just like, did Dish want to do what Ogard did? Like, it's just, it seems like it's the place to be now, and you're willing to put that aside.
Yeah, there's a bigger, like you said, there's a greater good and a bigger picture that takes precedence over your little hang-ups with people, and that's the way it probably should be.
Well, you don't get along at the quarterback spot if you're like, for instance, the practical application would be Kalen and Dylan.
Yeah.
Right? You don't get along as a group or as a competitive group if the culture can't sustain that or doesn't lend itself to that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. And I think there is, I don't mind, like, I understand when you say culture is a turn-off word to some people. I don't.
If you're immature.
Yeah, it's not a turn-off word to me. And I think that's what we're talking about. The Rhule has done a very good job, in my opinion, of quickly establishing culture. It's been pretty quick, right? I mean, we're only in the second, but it's quick, and I think it has to be nowadays because everything moves quick in college athletics, or at least in college football. There's a lot of transitions, players moving around. So when you bring in, what I'm getting at here is when you bring in like a Jamal Banks for 1 year, your culture kind of has to hit him fast.
Yep.
And he's got to get culture fast.
Yep.
Or the same with Stephon Thompson.
Or how about this one? Sip? How about Mazuka? You better get in line with the culture.
Right. It's kind of fun because you can't. At the same time, I don't, and I've never run a program, but I've been around this program for 30 years. I think you also there has to still be a little leeway. Like, not everybody's going to adopt at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Adapt at the same time. They're not. People are different. It takes some people longer than others to adapt.
Yep.
There's got to be that leeway. But you know what? That runway has got to be inherently shorter now, just the way things go. But I mean it when I say, I think Rhule has like, the Rhule way has set in very quickly. You have a good feel. You guys have a good feel for it. I have a good feel for it. So naturally, the players have a very good feel for it.
We're talking with Stephen Mortimer Sipple here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. Sip, this is
Marcella's greater than Mortimer. Just saying.
Well, I'm just I've gone through a lot of them now. I'm trying to get creative.
Next to be dropping Mercutio or something.
I think I did that last week. I think I did do Mercutio last week.
Marcellus.
Yeah, I
Montgomery.
kind of like Marcellus too.
Yeah, I
Sip.
think Marcellus and Montgomery have been your favorites so far.
Yeah.
I'm going to keep looking, though. That's what I do. I'm a worker, Sip. I'm just going to keep looking. Um, we talked to Sam McEwen earlier, and I asked him this question. And
Sam of the Omaha World Herald.
I'm curious how you'll interpret it, so I'm going to leave it a little open-ended. What position do you think is the most competitive this spring?
There's some in there. I would like. No, I would like. I'm not gonna. I always. Damon knows. I always go to running back. I'm not gonna because there's two guys that can't. You just can't. They can't really be in it. Gabe Irvin and Ramir.
Yeah. He's still Ramir in 2024. When do you think he'll go back to Ramir?
I don't know. It's RAH.
Ra. All right. So Ramir and Gabe, they're out. So you're going to go a different position group.
I would like to go to corner. I mean, the corner opposite Tommy Hill. I guess what we're doing collectively is writing in Tommy Hill starter. But what's the other corner? It's got to be hot. I mean, that's got to be hot. That competition has to be hot.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you don't have to write Tommy Hill in if you don't want to. I'll entertain.
I know one thing. It's demanding.
Yeah, it should be. It should be because it's critical. I think the corner spots will be fine, but I'd like to know who they are for sure. And then it's gonna be hot. I mean, across that secondary, it's hard to say exactly what the competitions look like because you don't know exactly the configuration.
Mm-hmm.
But man, I know this. I mean, if you just look at safeties, I mean, you got Hartzog, you got Gifford, you got Singleton. I mean, not everybody can play. So it's
well, those three will, but yeah, you're right. I mean,
you got Marquise Buford.
Yep.
I mean,
good call.
Who's all playing?
Yeah.
It's I'd probably just say secondary overall because there's so many bodies, and I'm not even naming them all. I mean, there's so many. It's one of those things. There's so many that you, off the hook, you kind of forget a few of them that are pretty good. So, like Kobe Bretz, where's Kobe Bretz in that comment? I don't know. I mean, I just know they got a lot of talent back there. And you know what? It'll get pretty hot at receiver to get in terms of.
That's where I thought you'd go.
Where's the ball going? I mean, because they have a lot of them now. I don't want to portray this like it's Ohio State. Nebraska's not that. It's just now it's representative of what a Big Ten team should probably look like. And we'll just the competition is for who's getting the most catches there.
Yeah, I could see it easily being a couple surprise guys will hit the portal and we'll have all these opinions, and it could be nothing more than, man, it's just deep. It's just
it's deep.
It's just deep. There's nothing crazy going on. It's just, wow, I can't believe that. It's like, portal's open now. Let me get at least the last one for me, because I'm beginning to think this is pretty underappreciated, and it's not everybody's fault because they can't always be around it. But one thing that I love is when they talk about practice, it's like not just a word, right? There's something to it, right? Showing up, being able to endure. Coach Rhule kind of quietly likes to function in chaos and to see if other people can. How much do you think Nebraska's culture being set so quickly has to do with the fact that he doesn't mind a little hard work, he doesn't mind a little elbow grease? There's something to him that I think he thinks is cool about making people uncomfortable, right? Like he's even hard. You'd agree he's hard on his staff too, right? Like there's
100.
It's amazing. I'm floored at what he asks and how he delivers and disseminates information to his staff. How much of that at the end of the day you think folks can appreciate, because at least the standard is set?
Yeah, I think people appreciate it. I appreciate it. I mean, here's what I'd say. I always tell people about Rhule. He's a hell of a leader. He's a good boss, but I'm not sure I'd want to work for him.
It's hard.
Yeah, I demand.
Like,
Very demanding. You know, I don't know if
and
I'm cut out.
it's intense. Usually I can, you go and you like to either smell the grass or a little bit of sweat on the pads, or like it has a smell to it. You can feel the intensity. And I'm not saying it lends itself to like wins and losses. What I'm saying is, when you're in a competitive environment, you can, it's in the air. And I think it even starts with the staff.
Oh, I do too, and I do think the win. I do think it. I mean, his track record would suggest that it leads to wins and losses at the college level. I understand the Carolina deal, but yeah, no, it's not for everybody. But if it is for you, it's a great environment. Yeah. And I don't think it's not for me, by the way. I like the environment. I like the way it feels over there. I think that's that's kind of this whole conversation is low level. It's kind of about that. I think we agree that the environment over there there's a lot of promise with the way it is. And I do like, what are we talking about? We're talking about 3 practice fields going. We're talking about kids telling you, yeah, everybody has a shot now. Show what they can do. Kids say that. The players, not all kids, by the way. The players say that. The old coaches say that. They like it. And we're not just talking off the cuff. I mean, I talked to George Darlington on Saturday. They like the way it feels. It's a lot of people that like the way it feels, but it is intense. I mean, that's the word I always use and that's one of the words I would use for Rhule's culture.
I mean, when like Ricky Henry and Mike Caputo say, this is what I'm talking about, it feels competitive. I mean, those are 2 pretty mean-spirited, competitive people.
They tackle now. I mean, they tackle a non-tackling game.
Yeah.
It is.
I mean, I was watching Ricky Henry last week, and he's just nodding his head behind his sunglasses in approval. And that definitely was not a fake tough guy. You know what I mean?
Oh God, no. It is football now. It's football. The Rhule's a bit of a throwback, and I think that's why he likes it here, because I think people like that here.
Are you surprised that it is as physical as it is? He's willing to let a few bodies. It's not intentional, right? But seemingly go by the wayside.
Yep, he has to be willing for that to happen. Oh, I always am a little surprised, but I go back to, hey, it's football. Play football. Kids like it. I think the kids like it. That's the bottom line.
Yeah. That is Steven Marcuscio Sipple, Husker Online.
You strike me as more of a Malik, Sip. How about Stephen Malik? You want to go with Malik?
I like Malik, Montgomery, or Marcellus. Be one of those.
All right, we'll keep finding it, Sip. We'll keep going. Hey, we appreciate it as always, bud.
All right, God bless.